بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد. So inshallah we're going to continue with the masail of speaking in salah. We built in the previous lesson the main masail connected to speaking in salah. So we're going to try and finish the remaining masail connected to speaking in salah, and then those things that take the rule of speaking in salah, or they could resemble speaking in salah, and whether they take the ruling of speaking in salah. So to continue, we mentioned last time of speaking in salah, and that the madhab mentioned many situations confirming that even if speaking happened in those situations, the salah would be invalid. But actually there's a difference of opinion regarding that. So when they say actually, there's actually, I'm remembering now that I missed it, there's actually a fourth opinion. A fourth opinion, if a person spoke for the benefit of salah, when they did the salam in the wrong place, when they did the salam early. This is Khiraqi's opinion. And he says, and Khiraqi is from the early Hanbali scholars, earliest ones. So before Ibn Qudama and all of them comes Imam Khiraqi, rahmatullahi alayhi. So he says that whose salah, that the imam, if the imam speaks, the imam's salah does not become invalid. And if anyone else speaks, their salah becomes invalid. And they say because Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam spoke, and he is the imam. Dhul Yadayn spoke because he had to speak. He had to speak because it was at a chance where maybe the salah was shortened. But anyone else, but a person, a ma'moom, the non-imam speaking, they cannot follow the example of Abu Bakr and Umar radiallahu anhuma. They have to follow Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Yes, Abu Bakr and Umar radiallahu anhuma from the Khulafa, but their sunnah is to be followed after the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam in most situations. So here he says that in that case, the ones who spoke from the ma'moomin were Umar and Abu Bakr radiallahu anhuma. So if a ma'moom speaks, he's following them, and he says, no, you shouldn't do that. You should follow Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and therefore the followers, their salah will break. And based on that, they say the munfarid, the person, not based on that, but in saying all of that, that means all the opinions we mentioned in the last lesson, along with this one here, along with this opinion, the munfarid, his rule for speaking in salah, either actually in salah or if he did salam in the wrong place, the rule would be like a ma'moom. The rule would be like a ma'moom. So it would not really make a difference. But we phrase it like that because of this opinion. So in this opinion, it would not allow the munfarid to speak, on Khiraqi's opinion. But according to the other opinions, either this munfarid who did the salam in the wrong place, or he's speaking in salah. We mentioned that Mardawi said the correct opinion is that, or the better opinion is that the difference of opinion applies to a person who did salam by mistake and spoke for the benefit of salah, or spoke actually in salah. So this munfarid, if he did the salam, and we say he's like the ma'moom, he can't speak on Khiraqi's opinion. But on the rest, he can speak. He can speak a little bit and for the benefit of the salah. And a little bit and for the benefit of the salah. And Ibn Taymiyyah would allow him still, even if he spoke not for the benefit of the salah. But when he realizes he's still in salah, then he shouldn't speak when it's something that is not for the benefit of the salah. He shouldn't speak for something that's not for the benefit of the salah. So then they say, so that's why the madhab says سواء كان إماما أو غيره, that the salah would break irrespective whether he's imam or not the imam, indicating to this opinion that the imam's salah would not break, or other than the imam. And if he spoke intentionally, that means or unintentionally. So therefore the second opinion in the madhab is that somebody who spoke forgetfully, we mentioned it that the salah, if he spoke actually in salah, then the salah would not break on the second opinion, on the Shaykh Taqiyuddin's opinion. And if he spoke in the case where he did the salam before the end of the salah, and he spoke for something that's not for the benefit of the salah, then that would break the salah. It was, even if it was unintentional, on the main opinion. The other opinion is that it would not break the salah. And then speaking for the third situation, speaking for the benefit of the salah, and we mentioned those opinions, the same thing applies. Or jahlan, or the person spoke ignorantly. And when we say ignorantly, the fuqaha mentioned there's no difference, what we're going to mention for an ignorant person, whether the person was ignorant of the rule of speaking in salah, whether he was ignorant of the rule, meaning the aspect of it not being permissible to speak in salah, or he was ignorant of the fact that speaking in salah invalidates the salah. Both things, it doesn't matter. So here the madhab says that the rule of somebody who speaks ignorantly, or not the madhab, the second opinion is that this person's rule is exactly like somebody who spoke forgetfully. So those who overlook somebody who spoke forgetfully would overlook the ignorant person, would overlook the ignorant person. In all the situations where we overlooked the person speaking forgetfully, also the ignorant person. The third opinion of actually some of the fuqaha, Ibn Aqil and others, they say that an ignorant person of the rule, or the two things we mentioned, his salah would not be valid, would not be invalidated at all, because he didn't even know the rule. He didn't even know the rule. And they link someone else to an ignorant person, the rule we're giving an ignorant person, that is somebody who just recently accepted Islam. He doesn't know the rules yet. He will take the ruling of somebody who's ignorant. So then they would say, Ibn Qudama says that there's more scope that a person who's ignorant, his salah does not break. Why? Because speaking in salah at some point was permissible. Speaking in salah at some point was permissible. We mentioned in the last lesson the hadith of Zayd bin Arqam. Speaking in salah was permissible, then became impermissible. And he says, Ibn Qudama, that when there's an abrogation of a rule, those people who followed the previous rule before getting knowledge of the new rule, that's the point we're looking at, having knowledge of a rule / of the new rule, then what they did while not knowing the new rule based on the previous rule does not get invalidated. Like what happened when the people, the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they were praying the salah. It was Asr salah, and they were in salah and they didn't know the qibla had changed. So then somebody came in, a caller came in saying the qibla had been changed last night. So the Sahaba, while they were in salah, they turned to face the new qibla. But that salah, they began facing the wrong qibla. In the raka'at, they prayed facing the wrong qibla based on the previous rule, not knowing the new rule. Those raka'at and the takbir, the opening takbir was not invalidated. So he says the same thing applies here. And you will not apply this rule, for example, to fasting, because at no point was eating while fasting allowed. So salah was different. So he says that somebody who speaks ignorantly, there's more scope that the salah does not be invalidated. So then the next thing they say, ta'i'an, a person does it through his own choice. He speaks. The opposite of it is mukrahan, or he does it, or he speaks because he's forced to speak. So the madhab says even if a person is forced to speak, the salah breaks. What does that being forced to speak? The second opinion is that the person takes the ruling of somebody who is forgetful. Because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Ufiya an ummati al-khata wa nisyan wa mastukrihu alayh, or mastukrahu alayh." That my ummah, what they've done forgetfully, or they've done by mistake, or what they've been forced to do, that has been overlooked, which opposes the Sharia. It has been overlooked and forgiven. So here Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam connected forgetfulness and being forced together. He connected them together. So they say the rule between the two go together. So they say if a person, the one opinion gives this coerced person, the forced person, the rule of somebody who did something forgetfully. Ibn Aqil says, in fact, somebody forced, he has more right that he's speaking, that he did because he was forced to speak, is overlooked than somebody who spoke forgetfully. Because he has more, so the rule would apply, it would be overlooked, to overlook this person even more than somebody who spoke forgetfully, because he's basically forced to speak. But the madhab says that this being forced is something that would occur very rarely compared to forgetfulness. Number one. Number two, they say it can't be overlooked, because if a person was forced to increase in the salah, they pray Fajr as 4, no one would say it's valid. So the same thing here. And number three, they say in general, and that is when a person is forced in general, and it would apply here as well. When a person is forced, then there's two things basically. A few amongst the main things connected to a forced person is the person's irada and his ikhtiyar. Ikhtiyar meaning a person's choice, and irada a person's will. So a person who's forced to do something, his ikhtiyar is still there, his choice is still there, but his will his free choice or his free will is not there. It's not fully there. It's not fully there. So if the person is forced to speak, if you don't speak, I'm going to kill you. He has the choice not to speak. But as he has the full will that it's all in his control, the answer is no. It's not. But the choice is there. He could not speak and get killed. But he does, so that it's not a free will. So there, since there is a bit of choice for this person, the madhab says that in this case, his salah would still break. And the other two opinions we mentioned, Ibn Qudama says, inshallah, the correct opinion is the opinion of the madhab, and he explains what I just explained amongst the reasons why, even if a person is forced or coerced, his salah would still be invalid if he spoke because he was forced. The last thing, or one of the last few, is wajaba. Then he spoke something that is wajib, in the salah. So here the madhab says it would still break. The madhab says it would still break. The second opinion is, Ibn Qudama says, that according to the principles of Imam Ahmad, a person who spoke because he was forced to speak, to warn somebody, a blind person here, to warn the blind person of something, or there was something dangerous going on, for example, a child was going to get hurt or something, and he spoke intentionally. Ibn Qudama says the opinion of Imam Ahmad is that a person can then build on his salah. He doesn't have to restart. Why? Because of Abu Bakr and Umar radiallahu anhum. They were forced to speak. It was wajib on them to reply to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu istajibu lillahi wa lirrasul. But in the rest of the verse, إِذَا دَعَاكُمْ لِمَا يُحْيِيكُمْ. Or you believe, you answer the messenger of Allah when he calls you to that which will give life to you. That's a literal translation, plus minus. So then the command to answer Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is wajib. So therefore, they answered Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and they did something wajib. They spoke because it was wajib to speak, and they built on their salah. So that's the second opinion regarding speaking when it's wajib. And then the last thing I think connected to this is that when a person speaks and the speaking is overlooked, Sajdah Sahu would become obligatory. Because if a person spoke intentionally, when we do not give him these other reasons, then the salah would be invalid. So when he spoke in a case where we are now allowing speech, which is not actually from the salah, then you have to do Sajdah Sahu. And when we spoke of ignorance, we also have Muawiyah ibn Hakam radiyallahu anhu, when he came from the desert and he joined the Jama'ah to pray with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the Sahaba. And he had recently learned that when a person sneezes and says Alhamdulillah, you say Yarhamukallah. And somebody in Salah sneezed. So Muawiyah said Yarhamukallah. And we said Yarhamukallah breaks the Salah. We mentioned it is not from the adhkar that resembles the adhkar of Salah. So it's there with the Sahabas, they didn't speak. They knew the rule of not speaking, so they were tapping on the shoulders, or they were making basically sounds with movements to indicate to Muawiyah radiallahu anhu to stop speaking and not to speak. And then he carried on speaking and he said a few things, and the hadith goes on. It's a bit of a lengthy hadith, but the point in this is that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, it's actually a very beautiful hadith, but we won't mention it because of the time. Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam did not tell him to repeat the salah. He spoke ignorantly. That's another evidence there. And then we said you do Sajdah Sahu, but Muawiyah radiallahu anhu did not do Sajdah Sahu, or he was not told by Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam to do Sajdah Sahu. So here the fuqaha say we can't bring this up, we can't mention this to say a person does not do Sajdah Sahu, because Muawiyah radiallahu anhu was a ma'moom. He was behind the imam. So therefore the imam would take care and be responsible for the mistakes of those behind him. So therefore, we're going to mention it when we come to one of the upcoming lessons, when Sajdah Sahu is done, when a person is behind the imam. So in this case, Muawiyah radiallahu anhu was behind the imam, so his mistake is not overlooked for him. It's overlooked for him. And that's why he didn't do Sajdah Sahu. But that rule does not apply to everyone else. It doesn't apply to everyone else if they're not behind the imam. The next mas'ala, the fuqaha say about greeting somebody in salah. They speak about greeting somebody in salah. So like we mentioned, if you are praying salah, somebody enters and they say salam to you. Is that permissible? The fuqaha say that وَلَا بَأْسَ بِالسَّلَامِ عَلَى الْمُصَلِّي. There's no problem in giving salam to somebody praying salah. That's the opinion of the madhab. The second opinion is that it's makruh. It's makruh. They say it's makruh because maybe it would lead the person to speak unintentionally. He might say wa alaykum salam. So because of the chance, it may lead him to speak, and they say don't give him salam, meaning it's makruh to give him salam. The third opinion is that it is permissible to give salam, to say the salam to a person in salah, if that person in salah knows how to reply. If that person in salah knows how to reply when greeted in salah. So those are the three opinions. Amongst the opinions, those three. And how do you reply? وَيَرُدُّهُ بِالْإِشَارَةِ. The person in salah replies to the salam with an indication. So he's in salah, he's told assalamu alaikum, then he just indicates. He doesn't indicate, he just replies with an indication. That's why they say فَإِنْ رَدَّهُ بِالْكَلَامِ بَطَلَتْ. If a person responded with kalam, saying something, the salah is invalid. Then they say وَيَرُدُّهُ بَعْدَهَا استحبابا لرده صلى الله عليه وسلم على ابن مسعود بعد السلام. They say that what is mustahab is that after the salah the person then articulates the response, because that's what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did with Ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu. After the salah, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam verbally replied with this to Ibn Mas'ud's salam. So that's mustahab for a person to reply after the salah. Then they say ولو صافح إنسانا يريد السلام عليه لم تبطل. They say that even if this person in salah shook the hand of the person who greeted, so they did musafaha, the salah would not break. And that's because it's an action, and it's not an action that has many movements. Yes, it's not for necessity, but it doesn't have many movements, and it won't be one after the other. It's just taking your hand out and putting it back in. So the salah would not break. Then they mention a few things. ما يجري مجرى الكلام. Okay, that's not actually from the matan, that's actually from the hamish. But basically, I read it because that's basically what's the next masail come about. And they say now these things that would take the ruling of, could take the ruling of speaking in salah. These few things, and then we're done, inshallah. So here, there's a few things just to start the mas'ala, or just now we'll get to them, and then the rest will just fall underneath. So they say وقهقه وهي ضحكة معروفة ككلام. فإن قال قهقه فالأظهر أنها تبطل به ولم يبني حرف. Okay, they say that if a person does قهقه in salah, so قهقه is basically to laugh in salah, to laugh with sound, or to giggle in salah. To giggle in salah, or to laugh. Basically, when you laugh and sound comes out. So the laugh, they call it قهقه because you're going to make a sound like a قهقه. Like that kind of a sound, they say this would take the ruling of speech. So even if you did this, that means قهقه. Even if you did this when you did salam by mistake, then on the madhab, the salah would be invalid. And they say وَلَا تَفْسُدْ بِالتَّبَسُّمْ. The salah will not be invalidated if a person smiled in salah. So if a person smiled in salah, the salah would not be invalid. But to laugh with sound, then that would invalidate the salah. Then they say وَإِن نَفَخَ فَبَانَ حَرْفًا بَطَلَتْ. So now here where we're going to mention the crux of this mas'ala, where all of these things would fall underneath, and then it's quite simple then to understand the rest, and we should be done then. They say if a person blows in salah, then in that case, so he blows in salah. They say if that sound that came out, if it sounds like two alphabets, then the salah would be invalid. So now they in general, this is all happening in Arabic, so they're referring to Arabic alphabets, but it could apply to any language basically, but the Arabic letters cover most sounds in any case. So they say فَبَانَ حَرْفًا, if the sound of two letters came out, because you're going to say so it sounds like a fa and then a waw, or like an f and a u, or f and an o, fu, like you have to make that kind of a sound, right? Any sound. So you blew in the salah. If the sound of two letters came out, then your salah would be invalid. And here they say two letters, and that's our point of this whole mas'ala. They say two letters. Why? They say if the sound of two letters come out, because they say in Arabic in general, the general trend of Arabic is that there's no word that comprises of less than two alphabets. It comprises of two letters or two alphabets in general. So they say therefore the lowest amount of letters that a word would comprise of are two letters. Therefore, if a person articulates something, anything that has two letters, whether those letters putting them together make something understandable, something understood from those two letters or not. The fact two letters are heard, it would invalidate the salah. It would invalidate the salah. So now, Sheikh Uthman ibn Gaid. Ibn Gaid mentions that they mention what I just said now. But he says that the strength of their kalam, what they say, indicates that even if a person were to say one letter, and this one letter gives off a meaning, the way they speak on this mas'ala, it would indicate that even if one letter were articulated and it has a meaning, one letter that has a meaning, say it like that, one letter that has a meaning, then the salah would be invalid. Why? We're going to speak on it now. But I just wanted to say that Uthman ibn Gaid says this. Muhammad al-Khalwati, in one of these later masail, it might be in this blowing one, or one of the others, maybe I'll read it when we come there. He mentions that in one of these situations where the fuqaha mention two letters, he mentions that even if one letter were to come, even if it's understood, it doesn't break the salah. He says khilafan li Shafi'iyya. He says that even if one letter, and this letter is understood, it will not break the salah. So it's there where he indicates that one letter that's understood, the fact that it's one letter would not break the salah. Uthman ibn Gaid, his student, says that the strength of the way they phrase it, the strength in the way they push on the two letter thing and understanding the two letters or even not understanding indicates that one letter that you understand has more strength to break the salah than two letters that alone do not break the salah. So you have certain words in Arabic like you have lam or len, alone they have no meaning. You can't understand anything from them per se. So, but compared to a word that is one letter that you can understand from. So he indicates that, but Muhammad al-Khalwati indicates that even if one letter that's understood, it will not break the salah. So it's interesting, they have a difference there. The madhab is two letters, and why Ibn Gaid mentions further, and I'm going to mention it now, but he says, al-Khalwati says khilafan li Shafi'iyya. So he says that the Shafi'i madhab, the Hanbalis, he's saying that the madhab would be that one understood letter would not break the salah, and that is not the opinion of the Shafi'i madhab. That's what he says. The Muhaqqiq in the book referenced a few Shafi'i sources, so I'm assuming he might be, what Muhammad al-Khalwati said might be correct, but I didn't check it myself. So therefore, Uthman ibn Gaid, he mentions this. And he says that basically similar to what I've said now, but he says that generally in the Arabic language, because now to go out of what he said, you have certain words in the Arabic language that they would be one letter, it would give the meaning itself. And they come generally in verbs, and specifically in verbs that you call that are mithal, you call them mithal or naqis. So mithal is a verb that out of the first three letters, the first letter is harf illa, so it's alif or waw or ya. And naqis is where the last letter is harf illa, alif, waw or ya. So when you have that kind of a verb, the command of that verb would be one letter. So for example, you have from the word waqi, something to protect. So you have the word qi. If you want to tell somebody to protect, safeguard, you can tell them qi. It will be enough. Or from the word waf, you can tell somebody fi. It will give off a meaning as well. So in the Quran we read رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً, but then we read وَقِنَا وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا. Qi is the protect, na, us. So take the na out, it's qi. One letter, it has a meaning. So that's what we get there. So Uthman says that yes, we spoke on the one letter, but generally the way Arabs speak, the general trend of the Arabs when they speak, yes, they articulate, you might write one letter, but when the Arab, when he speaks normally, when he stops on this letter and he just wants to say qi, he doesn't pronounce it just qaf with a kasra. He has an extra letter that naturally comes out in the way Arabs speak, and that is ha as-sakt. So they're going to basically be saying qih, fi. That's what he says. So he says essentially it will be two letters. So basically that's how the opinions come together. Shaykh Ibn Uthaymin rahmatullahi alayh. Shaykh Ibn Uthaymin, he brings up this aspect of one letter, and therefore he doesn't agree with this ta'leel with this reasoning of harfan, two letters, two letters, two letters. So every time they say two letters, he says no, because in Arabic you can have a word that has one letter, and that would have more meaning, that would have meaning already. So therefore, when we're saying two letters, we have what Uthman spoke about, Ibn Ga'id spoke about one letter, right? In the sense that if your person said qi, there's still a chance to break the salah based on what the fuqaha say in general about the meaning. But he also says, generally speaking, the Arab would not just say one letter. And the one letter is basically for writing purposes, but more than one letter will be pronounced. So basically it's more rotating around two letters. It's more rotating around two letters for the madhab. And as Muhammad Khalwati says, even if it's one letter, even if it's understood, doesn't break the salah. Shaykh ibn Uthaymeen, on the other hand, he says the one letter has meaning. The one letter will have meaning. So saying two letters, to say two letters, the lowest form of words, will not be too strong. It's not too strong a reasoning. So therefore he comes with different reasonings. So now when we know that, when we know this whole intro that I gave, even including Shaykh ibn Uthaymeen's opinion, then the next few masail, they're going to be very simple. So now when we said, وَإِنَّ فَخَا, if a person blows in the salah, then two letters came out, the salah will be invalid. That's the madhab. The salah will be invalid. Shaykh ibn Uthaymeen says no, because he says the two-letter thing doesn't apply. So his opinion would be different in the first place. He says that what is prohibited is blowing in salah for no reason. If you do that, the salah is invalid. But sometimes there could be a reason. For example, he mentions, like, if let's say there's a little insect on you, so you could hit it and kill it, but there's no need to kill it. You could blow it off. So now you might have made the sound that's two letters. But there's a need. So he says it doesn't invalidate the salah. And what he says is quite substantial. And also Shaykh Taqiyuddin, for this aspect of blowing in salah, Ibn Taymiyyah rahmatullahi alayhi, he says it doesn't break the salah. It doesn't break the salah even if two letters come out. And I think the hadith of Ibn Abbas, he says, من نفخ في الصلاة, whoever blows in his salah has invalidated his salah. فَقَدْ أَبْطَلَ صَلَاتَهُ. The hadith is something like that, but Ibn Mundhir and others say that it's a weak hadith. So now if we go back to the previous mas'ala of the qahqaha, they say in the book, I didn't read it and I didn't mention it, they say وَإِن لَمْ يَبْنِ حَرْفًا, even if two letters do not come out. They mention there it's an exception to the two letters. Another opinion in the madhab is there must be two letters. But here it says وَإِن لَمْ يَبْنِ حَرْفًا ذَكَرَهُ فِي الْمُغْنِ وَقَدَّمَهُ الْأَكْثَرُ قَالَهُ فِي الْمُبْدِعِ. So in Mubdi' it says most of the fuqaha say, most of the Hanbali fuqaha, in fact in general, according to all the schools, the Hanafi madhab are very severe in this mas'ala, then generally if a person said qahqaha, then it will break the salah, because it's not appropriate to laugh in salah. So it will break the salah, irrespective of two letters or not. So that's there. And then we spoke on blowing. Then they say وَإِن انتحب. So the next mas'ala they speak about is a person, he basically cries in salah, but he raises his voice while crying in the salah. So the Hanbali fuqaha, they say, if a person raises his voice while crying in the salah, and it was not out of fear for Allah. So the person, for example, he's in the salah and he got news, he heard nearby somebody speaking, or he was also of somebody close to this musalli passing away. Or the musalli himself, he was thinking of something that made him sad, and he started crying. If two letters, the sound of his crying left two letters, then they would say it invalidates the salah. They say it would invalidate the salah unless the person was so overcome with his sadness. He was so overcome, he couldn't even control it. And then two letters came out. So he was so sad, and he started crying and he couldn't control it. And then the sound of two letters came out. Then they say in this case it does not invalidate the salah. But if he was not overcome with crying and two letters came out, it would break the salah. And as I said, min ghayri khashyatillah, if it was not for the fear of Allah, like a person reciting verses of the Quran, and then out of fear of Allah, then he starts crying, and the crown has sound in it. It would not break the salah. So they say out of fear of Allah, but it also some of the fuqaha say even out of love for Allah, because you can cry out of fear of Allah, but then you recite a verse, something about the kindness or the mercy of Allah. So you cry out of just longing for Allah, yearning for Allah. So then in that case also the salah would also not break. Even if the person was not overcome with crying. In the case where it's out of fear of Allah or love of Allah, if a person, because Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, فَإِن لَمْ تَبْكِ فَتَبَاكَ. If you do not cry, then try and make as if you're crying. But in saying that, the fuqaha say, وَيُكْرَهُ اسْتِدْعَى الضحك والبكاء. They say a person should not try and do something that would cause him to cry or to laugh. Right? Because it could cause those two letters to come out. It could cause those two letters to come out. Then our second last mas'ala is to clear one's throat in salah. If a person were to clear one's throat in salah, they say that if two letters come out, and again I'm saying two letters, but the opinions would apply the same. Those who do not say the two letters, they would not have it. So Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen, for example, rahmatullahi alayh, he would say the crying for two letters would not count, where we mentioned it. He also would say it doesn't apply there. So the same opinion the difference of opinion we mentioned at the beginning, it would apply throughout these masail. Yes, certain times Shaykh Taqiyuddin, for example, might not be different to the madhab, but in general it's going to be like this. So then we speak of clearing the throat. If there's no need to clear the throat, what does a need mean? So when a need comes, it can either be qasira or muta'addiya. So the need is either a person has a need within himself, or there's a need with something outside of himself. So we mentioned an example. If let's say somebody knocks on the door or something, and you want to indicate to the person you're in salah, so you clear your throat. That's a need. That's what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did as well. Ibn Majah narrates that Ali radiallahu anhu said he had two entrances to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When it come through, and if Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was in salah, then he'd clear his throat to indicate to him. So that's a need. Another need would be if a person has something in his throat, so then he'd clear his throat. That is okay, even if two letters come out. But if a person were to clear the throat for no reason, and two letters came out, then the salah would be invalid. Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen rahmatullahi alayhi, he says that he doesn't mention the two letter. Well, let's leave Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen for this mas'ala before that. But Ibn Qudamah rahmatullahi alayhi, he says that Imam Ahmad, the fuqaha mention of Imam Ahmad clearing his throat in salah. So most of the fuqaha, the Hanbali fuqaha, say Imam Ahmad's clearing his throat was either there was no need, or either there was a need or two letters were not clear from his clearing his throat. So Ibn Qudamah says no. Ibn Qudamah says Imam Ahmad did not even deem this two letter thing to apply to clearing your throat. So the second opinion in the madhab is that clearing your throat does not break the salah, even if two letters show, even if two letters come out. Then the last mas'ala, or the third last mas'ala, if a person were to groan or sigh in the salah, he were to make sounds that resemble groaning or sighing in the salah, or moaning in the salah, they say awwah or anna in the salah. Inna Ibrahim kana awwah halim. Awwah, that's the word, to kind of groan, sigh, etc. If it's done out of fear of Allah, a person reciting the Quran and it leads him to these kind of sounds that emanated from him, the madhab mentions again the two letter thing. But they say if it's done out of fear of Allah, then even if two letters come, then it doesn't matter. It's overlooked. Just like how we mentioned for raising the voice with crying. So now they also say that it's obligatory on a person to answer the person's parents. If the person is in salah and their parents, one of them or both of them, call this person in salah, they say in nafil, it's wajib to reply to them. But as the madhab says always, the salah would be invalid. It's wajib to reply, but the salah would be invalid. But they say you do it in nafil. Because if it's wajib to reply to them, so wajib is stronger than nafil. But fard is stronger than nafil, this fard is stronger than wajib, or they're the same. It depends on how we interpret wajib. Then the last mas'ala, they're going to speak about a few instances where a person is overcome with something that could cause two letters to emanate from him, but he's overcome. So they just mention it to point out whether it does or doesn't break the salah. They say وَإِنْ غَلَبَهُ سُعَالٌ. So a person is overcome, he sneezed in salah, or he coughed in the salah, or he yawned in the salah, they say it doesn't matter, even if two letters come out. So the person coughed in the salah, he yawned in the salah, he sneezed in the salah, or he got hurt in the salah, so he said, for example, how we'd say like ow or ouch. Those are many letters that came out, but he's overcome. The person just felt pain, he said that's overlooked. It's overlooked. So that's something where a person is just overcome. The person is just he was just overtaken, and then the sound with letters emanated. This would the person's salah would not be invalidated even if two letters came out. They include in this if a person were to spit. If a person were to spit. But here spitting, they say if a person spit in the salah and two letters came out, then it would invalidate the salah. It would invalidate the salah, and if less than two letters, then it would not invalidate the salah. So for example, something fell on the person, so he made a sound, it would not invalidate the salah because a person was overcome. And they say, تكلم مغلوبا. If a person spoke, so for example, he's reciting and he ended up articulating something not from the Quran. Because from the Quran it's overlooked, it's dhikr, it's Quran in salah. But he said something, he just articulated something. Or he's in salah, he's reciting, and then he felt some pain, so he said, ouch, for example. Or whatever it may be. Then they say that he was just overcome, it's overlooked. They say even if a person slept in the salah, and he articulated something, it's overlooked because you have no control. But what's kind of sleep? They say sleep that does not break the wudu. If a person was just dozed off somewhat in the salah, especially if it's long salah or late in the night or something, and he dozed off but not to the level where his wudu breaks, but he spoke, then in that case they say the salah would not be invalid. And just our last thing, just a language benefit, they say, we said tatha'ub. We have the word tatha'ub. To yawn in Arabic you say tatha'ub. You can use the verb, you say the word tatha'ub. You don't say tatha'wabtu. You say tatha'abtu. Put the hamza. You say tatha'abtu. Who mentions this is mentioned in as-sihah. In fact, some of the mu'asqirin say you don't say sihah. You say لا تكسر الفتح من الصحاح فتقول الصحاح. So you can say that with those ways, and it's mentioned that you say تثاءبت. You say تثاءبت. تثاءب فلان or تثاءبت. And تثاوب, some of them say it's not the fasih. It's not fasih. But that's some of them mentioned, it's on the side. But our last thing, we mentioned sneezing and yawning, etc. Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen rahmatullahi alayhi brings a mas'ala, and he says some people they yawn and then they make the sound. They kind of like, there's the sound that after you yawn. He mentions that a person is extra with his yawning, and then he makes that sound. He says in that case, if two letters came out on the qaida of the madhab, he's mentioning, not his own opinion, then the salah would break. The Hanbali fuqaha might not agree with that because some of the ashab, they say they prayed with Imam Ahmad and he yawned 5 times in the salah, and the person could hear the of the yawn. So they might not agree with that, but basically it's to be avoided, because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said when you yawn, try and suppress the yawn, and if you can't, then put your hand on the mouth, and you also try to suppress that sound from the yawn. And Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen also pointed out another mas'ala, and that is when somebody sneezes and then they sneeze really hard, intentionally. Then he also pointed out in this case, there's scope to say if 2 letters come out on the principles of the madhab, then the salah would be invalid. And the last thing he says is, if the imam is taking too long in ruku' or sajdah, is that a haja, a need, where a person could then clear his throat to try and indicate to the imam? He says if the imam is extra long, then you could do this to prompt the imam. He could do this. Could you do that? You could say the dhikr loudly or say something else from the adhkar of the salah, as we mentioned last time, because that there's no question, it does not break the salah. Here, there could be a question whether there's a need. And if there's a need, then clearing your throat does not break the salah. If there's no need, then if 2 letters came out, then the madhab would say it would break the salah. So here he questions whether that's a need. So he says if the imam is actually extra long, then it could be a need. So with that, I think we've covered our masail connected to an increase in salah. All of the masail connected that we wanted to mention with regards to an increase in the salah. That means all what's remaining is decrease in salah and doubt. And we ask Allah Azza wa Jal to teach us that which benefits us, and to benefit us with that which He teaches us. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين والحمد لله رب العالمين.